invite you right away. Okay, so Matthew's on Zoom. The meeting all up here.
Apparently, if you log out and switch to guest and log in and sign the agreement and then log out of that, then you
Okay.
can get back into the campus network,
Well, I'm just restarting.
which shouldn't be a thing.
Well, I mean, I was connected down on East Campus.
Right, yeah.
I didn't even see you there.
Go ahead.
We're getting a lot of each other.
I know, right?
Are you surviving?
Be long enough.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. I'm here,
Oh, you do.
so.
Diane
Oh, that was
so
fantastic, wasn't it?
First presentation. Sit at the head of
That
the
worked out.
table.
We can swap it out.
Should I send my?
I just went to the feminist.
Oh, you can just talk.
Oh, nice.
And then if you're
Yeah.
on Zoom, you can just share your PowerPoint. Then
Okay.
everything just goes.
He
Okay.
teaches here.
Okay.
That's right.
Right.
Perfect.
So,
What's he field stuff?
Yeah,
What's
this
Casey
is-
do you
doing?
have the Zoom link?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Here we go.
Bobby, do you have the Zoom link?
I should have it, yeah.
It's also
I'm
with the
just-
calendar thing I sent yesterday.
Oh,
Bunch of
maybe on the
people said
calendar.
they would be coming, so we still have 8 minutes. So,
Oh, we will have-
yeah, if you can set
Oh.
up
Yes.
here, and I will get this
Okay.
connected.
All right, let me see here.
And see the
There we
way
Where
to
the Zoom link
actually
is.
connect to this over wireless, but I don't know how to do this.
Oh, yeah, good luck with that.
Five-star, here it is. Check this out.
All right.
What department is she in?
Information systems, but there's this book and Lily Jones.
Okay,
Amazing approach to looking at cybersecurity and how we can approach it, and it was, yeah, really, really good. Associate Professor Information Science. Okay,
See the
I know.
power.
I know.
anyways, another AI.
Good, yeah, oh, nice.
Yeah,
Well, this is what's great, right? It's like,
Yeah,
seeing all these
there's-
entities just get.
On this one, you can just,
You can check to see if this will go.
oh, that's
there.
great.
We got it. Look at this. We got it.
And then-
It's
How's it go?
Great, you can see it.
Oh, okay.
It's the owl. Have you used the owl before?
Okay.
The owl's great. Nice. It's a little creepy. but
Oh, it
works.
follows foot. Yeah, I see
It
that.
does, yeah, so it'll turn.
Okay, you're projected for the people here, and then if you share on Zoom, I think they're all good. I will mute the owl, but just have the owl camera so people can actually see you.
Let's see here. If I can see this.
You're on Zoom.
One.
And
Look at that.
I'll mute the owl. Zero the volume on my machine. So I have a couple.
Technology is lovely, isn't it? Welcome. It's good to see everybody. Thank you for joining us on this incredibly snowy day. I am in the HERPS program for Engineering, Ethics, and Society, and in the College of Engineering. And I'm here to talk briefly about co-authoring with AI and what our students are facing as they try to navigate a pretty Wild West landscape of AI rules, regulations, implementation, what is legal, what is not legal, but particularly what will they be expected to know when they hit the workplace in some cases in a few months. And so I'll show you a few of the things that we're doing in the HERPS program in terms of helping students understand how AI works and how you can write with it. But then also, I started pretty early working on developing a RAG for my classes, doing a fair amount of teaching students how to build their personal agent and things like that. So I'll give you just a couple of quick views of that, but mostly I'll focus on the writing. So the first thing that I think is worth noting is that when I first launched using, in this case, free ChatGPT with students in the fall of 22, I was in the middle of a semester of writing with students. I have that semester and every semester subsequently just checked with them to find out anonymously how many of them are using AI for writing or for summarizing the readings in their classes. Because it's anonymous and I have enough students, they tend to be honest, I think. Assume that these numbers might be a little low though, just in case. So this chart just gives you a quick sense of the percentage of students who have been using AI for writing homework assignments or for summarizing reading assignments for all of our classes. It jumped pretty quickly just in the last year. So fall 2023 with my freshman seminar, 38% of them. This fall, 92% of them. And there are some national numbers which suggest that our students are a bit precocious, but you know that certainly above 70% of high school students are now using chatbots for both functions. They're getting fairly sophisticated at generative AI for image production as well. But also a study that came out from Common Sense Media showing that that students who discuss the fact that they use AI for work and discuss how it works and what it might do are much more likely to not be duped by it, to not make mistakes with it, to not be irresponsible with it. So the first thing I do want to say is on campus, we have a wide range of rules and policies about whether you can use AI. We'll talk also about AI detectors and why they don't work and why they couldn't possibly work. But because of that, there's a kind of quiet hiding of the use of AI instead of an open discussion of it. And so I'm glad we're having this open discussion, and I hope we will all be having that discussion with our students also. So the first thing I think is really important to note is that we have a couple of urgent moments here because of generative AI having become so rapidly used by our students. And the first disconnect is that for as long as I've been in academia, writing has been used as a measure for learning. If you can write well, then you must have learned the material. It's been used as the primary assessment to demonstrate learning. And fundamentally, that was already a false aggregation. In fact, there's been a disconnect between student performance, the writing, and their proficiency, their learning for a very long time. It was just easier to ignore in the past. Really starting in about 2009 with the rise of student paper mills, and of course now scientific research paper mills as well. It's already been very difficult to determine whether what a student turns in as written work is actually an indication of their proficiency in the material, unless you have a blue book and a room and a proctor. But you know, we've all been doing assignments outside of class. We've all been assigning homework. And so that already has been a thing, and we simply weren't really facing it yet. Once ChatGPT 3.5 was released in public, what Ethan Mollick has called the homework apocalypse, people began to start thinking about this more directly. And by 2023, we had our first solid evidence that plagiarism detectors really don't work for generative AI. I mean, literally, generative AI is generating novel content. It is not simply cutting and pasting words from a pre-existing thing. And therefore, the algorithms that have been built to try to detect also tend to falsely identify all sorts of people, like people who are non-native speakers of English, like me, or like people who speak a different dialect at home, or people who are second language learners, or, I mean, the list continues. So in terms of AI detectors not working, I mean, the first big news of this was that AI detectors thought the US Constitution was clearly written by artificial intelligence, because anything written by committee and lots of people comes across as written by something artificial. I won't make any comments on that. The fact that AI detection tools pretty quickly were shown to falsely accuse international students. And then finally, most recently, a pretty substantial article on the high false positive rates and the psychological and material impact of that on students. So the fact that we have entered into a situation where there might be a lack of trust, either on the part of the students or on the part of the faculty, that students are not sure whether faculty are using AI to grade their papers. I know that there probably are faculty doing that faculty are assuming that students are using AI in many cases. I'm not saying anyone here would do such a thing, but this has created an atmosphere that I hope we can counter by public discourse, by talking openly about using AI for purposes that it's really wonderful at, and showing students what it's really bad at. So here are a couple of the other quick challenges that I want to outline. Students are definitely expecting that in every one of their classes, we are going to be teaching them how to use these tools effectively, ethically, and well. So the majority of grads wish they'd been taught AI in college. This came out in July. The number of students who are just showing up, I'm sure at your offices saying, hey, how do you use AI in your field is increasing. And so this is a really important moment for us to be investing in figuring this out and being open with students. And then the workforce skills gap. So in May this year, the Gardner report said that 75% of workers in America were already using AI at work. 46% started using it less than 6 months ago. There hasn't been an update on this number, but I would actually probably guess that it's a lot higher right now. So students are becoming more anxious about the fact that they are unprepared, that there is a gap in their understanding of how to use these tools well. And also the number that's not here was that 92% of bosses expected their younger employees to be able to use AI flawlessly. And that's our students. Okay, so first, writing. And I think this is important in terms of how we are teaching our students to write in our professions, how we're helping them to understand how to write well for our courses. As long as we think about this need to disaggregate writing as an assessment of learning from writing as an assessment of how well you write, I think we need to also think about writing as a product and writing as a process. So AI, as we all have experienced, is brilliant at writing as a product. We can take garbled text, we can take things that, that we're not really that happy with. AI can automatically do wonderful things, sometimes misreading what we've written, and we have to be careful. But in general, generates a credible and readable product. However, the thing that I'm concerned about that we might be losing, and I think this affects all of us who learned how to write as a process, is the idea that writing really isn't about that end product. It's about the process of thinking through what you believe, what you think, challenging your ideas. It's the way to externalize an internal conversation. So it's iterative. And so obviously one of our first steps has been to shift the focus of assessments from the product to the process, to have different pieces of work being turned in iteratively, but also thinking. It forces us to specify and clarify our thoughts and beliefs aloud to ourselves, as it were. And it's the way we learn complex topics. So if we use the fact that generative AI is available for writing as well, now that's our problem is done, I think we will lose an entire future set of generations who will no longer know how to think by externalizing their thoughts. It's also translation, and it's a fundamental means by which we figure out how to translate our amorphous thoughts into something comprehensible and convincing to someone else. So AI looks very good at translating. If you start to read it much more carefully, the initial veneer of of confidence that is offered by AI tends to reveal that we are handing over some of our thoughts to our AI overlords. So I think it's also important to be thinking in those terms. We have so many things to gain from AI, and I'm teaching it and I'm using it all the time myself. And yet we're risking the loss of this focus on process, of students figuring out how to think. And also we're kind of losing the meaning of writing. One example of this is letters of recommendation. The letter of recommendation is never really about the content, unless there's something extreme you have to say. It's about the fact that you are willing to spend the time to write a letter, that your name is attached to the time dedicated to that task. And the more we relegate all of our tasks to AI without thinking, the more we risk losing the meaning of all of those ways in which we write. So I'm not saying there aren't things that are perfectly written by AI. I think there are many things, but I think also our students need to understand where's that line, where's the line for each student personally, and also where's it for us? And we need to be explicit about that to our students.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to skip that. So in Herb's classes, we've decided to start teaching students how to write first without AI because they really do need it. So we're spending the first several weeks of each course showing them how to write well, starting with how to write a good sentence, so that later on they can figure out whether the AI is generating a good sentence. So you have to know how to do it in order to know how to judge it. So a lot of the beginnings of our courses are really focused on just how do you write? What does good writing look like? What does good writing feel like? So that they can develop some intuition about college level writing. But then this is where I want to get, I know this is a workshop, so this is where I want to get to some of the more specific things that we can do. And this will work for any class. In fact, this just worked in the freshman seminar for engineering students in the college. Introducing students to work effectively can be just as easy as giving them an assignment, telling them to do it without AI, then giving them the same assignment again with AI and asking them to judge the difference. I mean, this is self-evident in some ways, except what's fascinating to the faculty who are already doing this is that the responses we're getting with AI are actually really good once students do more than put in the prompt. Most students will simply take the prompt right now. However, the sophistication is increasing, the outputs are improving, and there's really no way to gut judge anymore unless a student has made a dreadful mistake. So instead of trying to focus on policing and catching, I think focusing on channeling the abilities of generative AI for writing is a much better and actually probably the only rational approach to the situation. But having students see what ChatGPT, for example, I'm using the free version in my classes, did well or poorly, having them assign a grade to what the generative AI would do, particularly using a rubric that is already available for their assignment. Then I assign the grade and they can see what grade the ChatGPT would have gotten, which usually if it's just a prompt that was entered, it's probably a B. Sometimes a C. It's not great work. What further information could you provide to get better results? How would you edit the results to improve the essay? And particularly, why do you, the human writer, matter in this equation? Because if students can know, and actually, if all of us cease to be able to prove why we matter, then we might as well just have all of our generative AIs talking to each other. I have an agent who's pretty good at reproducing the way I sound, the way I write, the way I talk. Sure, I could just unleash that agent, but I kind of want to still be part of my life. So I think this is actually it's an existential question as well. And it's a question of human autonomy. So that's one example of something that I think is probably useful in any class. Another, and this was also from the first year seminar, this is tiny, but mostly to give you the gestalt of what happened. I asked students after they showed up for class, having had a long assignment, it was a chapter of Neil Postman's book, and I thought, yeah, nobody's going to read this. They're all going to have it summarized by an AI. So everybody showed up. I put up my ChatGPT summary of it, and people's jaws dropped. They said, whoa, you summarized this? And I said, all right, how many of the rest of you did? Maybe 3 people didn't say that they'd summarized the reading. And I said, now let me overlay everything I wanted to talk about with this reading that wasn't in the summary. So just to give you a sense, all of this writing is actually the main points, the main concepts, the main things I thought were important and needed to be discussed. And none of those are available in the summary that was provided by ChatGPT. This works in any discipline. And I think it's a really important thing to try, particularly if you're assigning constant research papers, to just give them a few examples very early on of what you would have pulled from it versus what they will have seen if they used a summarizing tool. And please interrupt. If questions, comments, is there a question that goes with your facial expression?
No, I thought it'd be funny if they said, well, tell me what Diane Sieber would summarize.
Yeah, well, yeah. I talked to the Board of Regents maybe a month ago, I think, and I admitted to them, much to my chagrin, that I found out I had students in an ethics class of all things generate a Diane bot that they could consult based on all of my class notes. I'm not kidding. That they could then ask ethics questions of. And of course, my first response to that was, what's ethical about that? Like, I was really truly horrified. As you probably all know, there's a substantial and very profitable post-life AI digitizing industry where you can digitize everything. This was a Black Mirror episode. I don't know why nobody actually paid attention to it, but there are currently 43 companies as of last week, the last time I checked, which will take all of the data available on social media and that you provide for a lost loved one and recreate them for you to interact with forever. So this is something actually for faculty to know as well, that anything you're saying in class the transcript can be uploaded, and students can interact with that by asking questions. And so these are all things we need to actually be aware of and talk about with our students. Yes.
I have two thoughts.
Yes.
The first one, given the short time that stuff is out, I wonder what this discussion looks like in 2 years.
Right.
And the other thing is, kind of summarizing a text. Kind of that obviously is also can be an iterative process that can be done with AI. So to some extent, kind of, I think what you say, you would have summarized different than the GPT. I wonder whether this is just because the way they did it as a one-time shot.
Right.
And I'm not sure whether the student summary would have been that much better than the AI summary. And that's really the question here, that your summary is better. I'm not surprised because you have a different perspective. But if a student reads that text for the first time, I wonder whether this summary would be any worse or better than the one that.
Yeah.
So
great point. That's a wonderful point. And also it's a great teaching tool. Having them generate the summary and then having them look at it after the class is over as a next assignment, so that they can begin to understand how to read these articles. I don't think we've ever actually taught them how to do it before. I think that we assume that people can learn how to read on their own, a very complex technical article, but maybe we've been assuming too much all along. So to some degree, to me, this is again about the making it public. I think the fact that we can now look at this and say, what was wrong here? What else might one draw from this will help our students learn better. And with regards to this meeting, in 2 years, I assume that you and I are both wearing smart glasses.
we do.
We do. Wait, let me speak into your microphone. Yes.
So I feel like there's 2 types of reading documents. One is to get the big picture ideas, and in many technical areas, we need the details, like things that are written specifically need to be understood.
Right.
And I wonder if generative AI is necessarily good for both.
It can be.
Okay,
It actually, so I'll show you in a moment, in a way in which it can really be very good at that.
Yeah.
Good.
okay.
Okay.
I didn't see your slide.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Quickly, I've been using AI as a writing coach a lot. This is not me having an AI grade student papers, but it is providing students with very specific prompts so that they can get their own papers to be better before they turn them in for grading, so they can interact dialogically with AI as opposed to one and done, turn it in, hope for the best. I'm happy to share these prompts with anyone who would like them. But the prompt I've been using for any time students are about to turn in a paper is the following: you're a kind and supportive writing tutor, blah, 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 using the attached rubric. So anytime you have any kind of grading criteria, you can have them submit that as well as an attachment, and have, therefore, the AI judge their work based on those criteria. This is incredibly useful. Prompt me with feedback to help me turn this paper into A-level work. Now, of course, disclaimer, this might not get you an A, but this is what you're trying to ask it to help you with. Do not correct the paper, but ask questions and make concrete suggestions. So just getting students to begin to understand how they can have a dialogue with AI to improve through an externalizing process is so much better than having an AI just rewrite it, and there you are, and it's convincing enough for me. So also ask if I need further information or details. Telling AI to ask questions is something that students are not used to doing yet. We might not be so used to it either. In action, students use this before they submit anything. I give them different variants of it, and they can evaluate what role they played versus the role the AI played, and what parts were contributions of whom, and how to cite a co-author, because this is a co-authored work. Yeah,
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Oh, goodness. Okay.
No,
So leap.
we have 5 more minutes.
Okay, leaping ahead. I've also taught them how to create agents that can be a writing team or a review board for their work. And I'm doing this. So this is why I suggest that they try it. So I've just created agents that are my harshest critic, my gentle muse, that bizarre friend who always makes weird connections between things that I never thought of. And I have separate prompts written up for them. Anything I write, I submit to a board of editors. The best benefit to me, and so far to my students, has been that if my harshest critic is going to look at it, I don't have to be that. I can just write. If my, gentle muse, my kindest friend, is going to look at it, I don't have to do that either. So I can simply generate, and then I can see the feedback, and then I can work with those items. Being able to have a team to support you, I think, is so much better before you try to externalize your thoughts. So here's another, this is, I guess, level 3 of the game here. So teaching them how to build agents, one, just with ChatGPT, which is super easy, but how to build a chatbot from scratch, so that they will then understand how it works and why it does certain things well and certain things poorly. I think learning how to build it is how you learn how to use it, right? It's how I learned how to drive a car, was to take it apart and put it back together. And then I understood. No, you didn't do that? Okay, well,
No.
okay. I like taking things apart. Sorry. Okay. So I've been, this started with the first year students a year ago, but in every one of my classes, I'm teaching them how to build a chatbot. I'm teaching them how to set up a database, and I'm showing them how to build a RAG. So how to create an information specific database that they can query and interact with through an agent. And this is for your notes. This is so that you can dump every note you've taken into one location and then start interacting with those notes so that you can make connections across classes, across topics, across hopefully years of study. So I'm doing this myself. They also, in my class this last year, helped me build an AI teaching assistant so we could dump everything from the course in, and then the teaching assistant could interact with students to answer the most repeated questions. However, this is a fast moving situation. So Notebook LM does this now. So, for 6 months, I felt like I was way ahead of the curve, and now I don't have to spend all of that time, although I can still show students so they understand what this does and what it doesn't do. So, this is source grounded AI, and it works incredibly well. I know you're going to talk about this, so I'm not going to delve into it. I will simply end with, I have one of these for each of my classes right now. And this is one example of uploading every text for a class, and creating different possibilities for students to interact with that information. So a briefing document about each of the articles so that they don't have to go do that. They can look at it. Some of the topics that I think are really important, something on the common threads that unite all of these topics so they can begin to see why I might have chosen all of the readings that I chose for the course. But by creating this, they have a shared resource. They can all contribute to it instead of them all trying to reduplicate efforts separately. So I think we're in this incredible, one slightly scary Wild West moment, and also a real golden age for knowledge retrieval, organization, for interacting with your own past research. And so I'm very encouraged. If anyone would like, I have an 8-page guide that I hand out to students on how to write effectively and ethically with AI. Happy to share that with you if you'd like to have it. But if anybody has questions, please just get in touch with me, and I'm happy to help. Yes.
Can you talk about the AI lab that you're starting up? Is that the right?
Yeah. So here, shall I stop share?
Oh, sure.
And now, yeah, we can see something. So the AI lab that I'm working on, this is Tom Ye and I are putting it together with Larissa Schwartz and Atlas. All we're doing is getting access to a bunch of different models and creating a space where people can come in, sit down with somebody who knows what they're doing, and play with different models. So right now we're using his lab to do this. We have faculty coming in. I had 40 some students show up last week, just randomly for my office hours, to sit down and look at what different models will do and why they're different. We have 5 student volunteers who've agreed to hold hours, and we're training them all so that they can help students interact with AI. So right now it is literally kludged together. I have a used laptop and a new laptop that I'm donating. We have a desktop computer. We have a couple of monitors. So it's just really seat of the pants, but it was needed like 2 years ago. So we just decided we're not quite ready, but we'll just do this. There is, OAT has put out a call that's due today for people who want access to a portal that will contain a lot of these different models. And we've put in a request to have access for graduate students and undergraduates to be able to help faculty, staff, and students who want to drop by. So we'll post hours and hopefully we're over in the DLC. Hopefully we'll get more faculty to come. We had, we've had people from all sorts of departments drop by already. So thank you. Where are we going to post the hours? I will get a message to Sriram so that we can get that information out.
Yeah.
We're hoping for 10 to 15 hours a week that will be open to help people just come in and play and consult.
Sounds good.
Done.
Yeah, no, it's that's great. We still have a couple of minutes more
Oh,
for
right.
questions, and maybe questions from people online. Online people.
Online people, if you have any questions, raise your hands and go let us know your question.
I had my hand raised. I was just going to mention, if you have a recent Mac, there's free software called LM Studio, and you can run pretty reasonable AI models on your laptop or iMac or whatever.
And so that's another matter that I think is a concern I didn't have time to talk about, but having students understand what they shouldn't upload.
Saying you're muted.
Oh, I'm not live, so,
Should I just close my computer?
no, it's a question, it's what.
I think we're done.
I think so. Thank you so much. The next speaker who's getting set up is Bobby Hodgkinson from the Aerospace Engineering Department. So a quick introduction to Bobby. I got introduced to Bobby because I mentioned to people in the college that I was interested in looking into generative AI last year, and Bobby just showed up in my office hours and started talking, and I so enjoyed talking to him about all his ideas, and he's one of the early pioneers in our college who looked into this technology and how it could help his students in aerospace engineering. And he's been very active with the Rocky Mountain AI group as well. So it's my pleasure to have Bobby tell us a little bit about things that he's doing with generative AI and how to create chatbots.
Let me.
Technical issues, but we'll get set up in a couple of minutes. Are you sharing?
Let me share the Zoom.
Yeah. That would good. Yes.
How's that look?
Yeah, perfect. And
Can we
yes,
see
we
that?
got it.
And
Yes,
You can hear me?
we got it. And if you press on more and say hide floating meeting controls.
All right, we're good?
Yep, we're
Okay.
good.
Thanks for joining us here. I'm actually gonna follow up on a lot of the stuff that Diane talked about through the lens of what can you do right now, right? So my goal here is at the end of my time with you, I want you to start thinking about, I can use an AI tool for this, right? Essentially, the way I describe it to my family and friends is anything that's in front of a screen, you can probably use an AI tool to help make that more efficient, more effective, maybe more detrimental as the things that you pointed out. So we'll see here. So I'm going to start with some very basics, just looking at chatbots, right? I think that's the entry point to talk about here. And then I'm going to move into some examples with Notebook LM, so following up on what Diane talked about there. And then also looking at custom GPTs, which you also talked about there. So no, this is great. I'm going to show you some of the things that I've been doing with real video clips, right? So I think Diane did a great job kind of laying out the framework and the environment that we're in. I want to show you effectively how easy it is to do that. And I know as educators, we shouldn't use easy and hard, but in this realm, I really do feel like easy is an appropriate term because it is so tremendously straightforward to have access to these incredibly powerful mechanisms. I'll hint at compliance a little bit, but in all honesty, I just came across the learning design group at CU just put together a really nice video, and here's the link to it. I'm sure we can find it or post these slides or something that essentially talks about the stuff that I'm going to talk about here. And then they also give a really nice look at data governance and compliance and things like this. All I'm going to say is I recommend you don't put anything into any of these bots that you wouldn't tell somebody on the bus or on the plane. Now, I will show you some of the things that I have with in-house machine that's actually living in a closet right across the street from me, and that's fully locked down. That's what I'll call an advanced case. All right. Before we get too in the weeds here, I think it's important to mention when we talk about AI nowadays, we're talking about a very small subsector of a huge field that's been around for a long time. Why is everybody interested in this right now? It's because generative AI was made very easily accessible to anybody with a computer or a phone about 2 years ago when ChatGPT 3.5 came out. So it's important to establish where we're at in this much bigger, much more broad field. GPT is kind of the nomenclature from ChatGPT. It stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, but they're trying to basically trademark this term. Basically, it's just like a custom bot. So if we say AI, we're talking about generative AI, GPT, we're kind of talking about a custom bot. Prompt engineering is a really interesting thing, and Diane, I think you hinted at this a little bit. About a year and a half ago, there was a lot of talk in the community that prompt engineering is going to be the new engineer, right? It's going to rival aerospace and civil and mechanical. There's so many people that are going to go into prompt engineering, and schools were starting to spool up programs like, how do we teach prompt engineering? This all went away instantly when somebody realized, what if I just ask the chatbot to write its own prompt? And it worked tremendously well. And I'll show you that here. So this idea of prompt engineering, you're not going to get a degree in it anymore because you can just pay $20 a month, or the free version works great too. My best advice, ask the bot. That's what's so amazing about this time that we're in. Anybody can use natural language to communicate to a computer and get tremendously powerful results. You don't have to have a computer science degree. You don't even have to have a STEM background at all. You just have to have the ability to talk. All right, let's look at ChatGPT. If you haven't played around with this, go ahead and play around with it. Sign up for an account, ChatGPT, put in your prompt. Here, these clips are going to go a little quick. I just asked it, hey, I'm giving a talk to you all. What should I cover? And it just starts giving you stuff. The key that I think I got away from Diane's talk is there needs to be a human in the loop. These things are tremendously awesome at giving you a wall of text, sometimes to their own detriment, but we need to look at that. And I think that's where higher ed and education in general is going to maintain a foothold in this new world, is training individuals. How do we look at this stuff? Perplexity is a really good one. Perplexity is fantastic at searching the internet and then giving you a summary based on the results. ChatGPT is now having that feature as well, and they kind of rival each other. But before a week ago, Perplexity is where I would go to just chat with a Google search, right? So when Google first came out, you had to be very specific about your query, and you still kind of do. Perplexity, you can just kind of talk to this engine and it'll give you results. If you look really closely there, I asked for the dates of CU volleyball and CU basketball games because me and my girls are loving going to those now. It reported back an incorrect date, but what was really nice about Perplexity and other systems like this is they give you a little icon that you can click on to then go to the source and verify it yourself. Up until pretty recently, that was something you kind of just had to trust, right? Whatever Sam Altman at OpenAI decided to feed you, that's what you were stuck with, because it didn't know where that information came from. But now they're starting to see, oh, that's really important. So they have added these kinds of features. Claude, I like to mention Claude. Claude is really good at code. So what I'm asking here is I want to make a better app instead of the RTD app for when my daughter's getting ready to go to school, because the app that RTD has isn't very good. So I just asked Claude, hey, can you write me some code to do this? And it wrote me some code. In full transparency, this is the code that I wrote with ChatGPT, and it works pretty well. But the idea that you can use these different platforms to help you write code is tremendously powerful. It's also tremendously dangerous, because what I found myself doing is I'll write what I want the code to do, and it'll give me a whole bunch of Python, right? A whole bunch of whatever you want. And then when something doesn't work, what do? I take the error and I put it back in, and it tries to fix itself. That's good if it fixes itself, but what happens when it doesn't fix itself? Then you kind of get in this downward spiral of, well, I don't really know what the code is doing, and the machine isn't really working very well for me. And it's just this endless spiral. So that's something to be very cautious about. Pros and cons, these things are really very easy and inexpensive. So ChatGPT has free versions. All these other models have free versions that you can use. And typically you're limited with how many interactions you can have. The more advanced things are on the order of $20 a month. So really pretty inexpensive for the amount of power that you get. Are these things compliant in terms of FERPA and everything else? Some people are thinking yes, some people are thinking, well, not if it, my mindset, again, don't put anything into these computers that you wouldn't tell anybody else. All right. Now, Diane mentioned this, the OIT LLM gateway, that's going to be under our umbrella. So we can feel, pretty safe sending and receiving information from that. So I'm really looking forward to this. What I have in my little closet down in aerospace is a server that's running Olama and Open Web UI, and I'll show you that. Basically, it gives me another way to interact with these bots, but I have full control over the information from my computer through the Ethernet to that computer, and it doesn't get out. So therefore, it's compliant if nobody else has access to it. It was working pretty well. One big con with these things is hallucinations, right? And people have heard about these things. It's just a tendency of these models to tell you the wrong thing. So here's an example of that. I'm asking ChatGPT, when was ChatGPT 3.5 released? It told me March 2023. I knew better, and I thought it was kind of around November or December. So then I asked it, and it said, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. I was wrong in telling you something about myself. Why did it behave that way? Maybe into computer science, but the fact of the matter is these hallucinations exist, and you're just as likely to get the wrong answer as the right answer. And this is where I think Notebook LM is tremendously useful. So Diane showed a little bit of Notebook LM. Here's just a clip of me uploading some documents to it. What's so awesome about Notebook LM is now I can give it specific pieces of content, and you can chat, and it focuses on those pieces of content. And then it also gives you the links to where the query was satisfied. That's pretty cool in itself. It really addresses this idea of hallucinations. What's also really great from an educational point of view is you can click these little frequently asked questions or the study guide or table of contents, brief, whatever you want, and it will auto-generate these things for you. So if you are a student and you have lecture notes, anything else, throw it up in here, and now you can interact specifically with that content. That's great from a student's perspective. What I'm using it for here, and there's a lab going on right now where I'm deploying exactly what I'm showing you. I uploaded my lab assignments, and then I had it create an audio overview. This is a little podcast, right? So 2 AI people are talking about your content, and they sound really, really good. Hopefully the audio comes through here on the next slide. But then what I've been doing is I take that audio overview and I stitch images from my lab document or from your lecture or whatever to follow along this audio overview and publish it on YouTube. And it's a production quality YouTube video in the matter of an hour or 2, right? The general rule with video production was for every 1 minute of content, it should take you about an hour or 2. With this approach, you can cut that down to 10 minutes per minute of content. It's absolutely insane. And it does pretty good. So let's see. I don't know if the audio will come through here.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of aerospace engineering.
Great.
We're going to be looking at aerodynamics and structural analysis of a cambered airfoil.
Yeah, specifically for this lab assignment that you guys have.
I mean, we could listen to this all day, and you can go to my YouTube video, like and subscribe, and we're gonna keep right. And it's so easy. So in this community, if you will, of people following AI, they're saying the world of podcasters is basically gone, right? This is a Notebook LM. I don't know if you mentioned this. Notebook LM is owned by Google, right? It's free to use. All you have to do is sign up. It's free to use for now, but it's tremendously powerful. Nobody really has any idea how long this is going to be free.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of at the whim of Google.
It's experimental phase.
It's very experimental, and it's incredibly promising. So I used to recommend ChatGPT as the place to go to kind of do these things, and that's still a pretty strong recommendation, or Perplexity, wherever you want to go. But Notebook LM is absolutely incredible. I can't rave about it enough. Uh-oh.
So maybe a quick
Yeah.
observation or question here. Have you looked into the terms of use for Notebook LM? Is it okay for us to upload?
I would say it's not okay for you to upload anything to any of these devices or models that you don't have full control over.
Okay.
In terms of compliance information, right? These are my lab documents. They've been published for a while. I know they're out there, right? I don't mind if they're out there, but would I upload a student report to this? Absolutely not. No way. I also wouldn't upload a student report to ChatGPT. even if you take the names off of it. And I have some workarounds here that I've developed for things of that nature.
There's also the terms of use right now says they're not using it to train anything, but that obviously changes on a whim.
Mhm.
So, you know, we have
Yeah.
to be aware of the fact that whatever they say right now is not gonna be true necessarily next week.
My mindset for this compliance is let's have the CU lawyers talk to everybody else's lawyers, and then we just do what we're allowed to do. Right now, we don't really know. So the safest thing, in my opinion, what I've been operating on is, again, only send stuff up that you're comfortable leaving out on the street, right? Notebook LM again is really nice, but it lacks this idea of a personality. So Diane hinted and mentioned some custom GPTs and custom bots and things that you can do. And that's what I'll spend the next couple minutes on. A GPT is kind of this idea of giving something some information and then giving it a personality. The tip that I really like to use is ask the regular chat GPT to come up with an instruction for your custom bot to do what you want it to do. So that's what I'm doing here in this clip is I said, hey, I want you to create this custom GPT to help do something here. And then it creates the prompt. I copy that prompt over into, there's this little button up here, Explore GPTs. This also is not funded by OpenAI, right? This is just the stuff that I've talked about. So here we go. So we can create this little custom bot, give it the instructions that you want, give it a name, give it a description, and now you can chat with this custom bot that has specific instructions to act a certain way. So you can even upload some of your own writing and say, maintain the tone, the clarity, whatever else you want to say about your own writing. And then the outputs from this bot will sound very similar to you. Is it going to be exactly you? Of course not, but it's going to sound a lot closer to you than if you didn't give it something like this. So this bot here is what I'm calling the AeroLab pre-submission. So you hinted at this a little bit. The idea here is a student can upload their submission to this bot and it gives them specific feedback on rubric related items for this particular lab. So all I did to build this bot is I uploaded my lab and then my grading rubric to this thing. And I said, create the prompt to define the interaction that way. So now instead of 50 groups asking me, hey, did I cover this thing? You ask about this thing. Did I include this thing in my report? You can just go to the bot, upload it, and you get feedback right away. So that's what this one is talking about as well. So pre-submission helper. The other one that I started working with is this academic pre-advisor. So this is, I built this kind of when GPTs came out, and I wanted to see if I could build a bot that would help students walk through what's going on in the curriculum, right? As a way not to replace the academic advisors.
5 more minutes.
Okay, not a way to replace the academic advisors, but as a way to help the students get started with that process. And then when they ask the academic advisors a question, it can be more specific to them. So I just uploaded information right from the website, gave it a personality, and then students can interact with this. And what I do in the rest of this clip is I say, hey, I'm a sophomore aerospace engineer. What are some of the courses I'm going to be taking next year? And it goes to its knowledge, pulls it out, and responds. ITA is kind of like a custom GPT, but for your entire course. So this individual, Bo Wu from the School of Mines, built up this tool. You upload whatever information you want to this thing, and it acts kind of as a Socratic style tutor with your course material. So this is really, really cool, really interesting. Here in this little demo, I just say, hey, can you help me understand this coefficient of pressure, this lab that I have going on? So this is just a look at Open Web UI. This looks and feels a lot like ChatGPT, but it's living on a server that I can go and touch, and I have full control over the pipe. This is a little bit of an advanced use case, but it works pretty well. What I do with this right now, in my lab course, I have around 300 students split between 4 sections, broken down into about 55 groups. Every week, I ask every student to tell me, what did you do this week? And then also, what did your group do this week? That's useful information from the instructional point of view, but you can imagine 300 students answering 2 questions. That's a lot of content. So what I've done with the help of ChatGPT and some other platforms is I take everybody's feedback, combine that with everybody else in their group, and now I have a group summary, and then I send that information, which may have some identifiable information, over to this custom server, have that summarize it in an AI phrase. So instead of 7 sentences, it's now condensed into 1 or 2 sentences. And then what I can do is I can upload that to a custom GPT that's specifically told, look at all these groups and extract information that's good for me. So this GPT tells me how are all the groups doing in the course. And it's also told, look for groups that are ahead or more interesting from my perspective as an instructor. Tell me groups that are behind, right? And it does a really good job at that. So here we go. I'm highlighting groups behind. So now I can take 55 groups in my lab class, 300 students, and I can focus my attention initially on these 3 that appear to be behind. A report grading assistant. So we can do here's all these 55 groups. I'm not using this to grade the reports. I think there's some ethical concerns. There's also some consistency concerns with that. But where these LLMs are great at is finding where in a document specific things are located. So I can upload a student report and I can upload a rubric and I can say, tell me where in this report this rubric item is addressed. And then it goes through and it highlights it. And now the graders can go in and focus their attention for that rubric item on the pink highlighted part, whatever it is. And in the past, this would take the graders 3 or 4 days for 50 submissions. It's down to around 2 days right now. And this last year, I reduced the number of graders because of this. This is a new extra credit assignment. So very similar to what Diane's talking about. How can we get students to interact with this in terms of what do we think their future career is going to look like? What this assignment, well, it's an extra credit, is looking at is I've got this lab assignment and it's pretty big, 7-week lab looking at why does a wing bend, things of that nature, the aerodynamics around it, broken up into many different milestones. What I told the students is I'm going to give you AI generated solution. And then I want you to compare that solution to what the correct solution is. I think this is the world that our students are going to be entering in whatever field, right? Writing, business, engineering. They're going to have a device at their side. Why not give them some exposure to that right now? And that's what this extra credit assignment is looking like. It's happening right now, so I don't have any, real hard concrete data to even talk about, or I don't even know how many students are going to participate in this. I think it's really useful. I think it's good to get exposure to this in terms of what is the AI good at? What is it not good at? And this part here is how I generate this. I upload my assignment and I say, I'm a professor, I'm trying to do this. Give me some code, give me some solution. And it's really this straightforward. I give it this prompt, gives me code, gives me solution. This is using ChatGPT 4.0, which is like a tier below the most frontier model right now. What I found is ask 4.0 information that you need to upload content to, like a PDF or a picture or something, and then ask it to give a prompt for the top tier frontier model that we have, which is 0.1 preview. So this is giving me a prompt based on other information, and then I can go into 0.1 preview, which is again outstanding, give it that prompt, and then it thinks about it for a little bit and gives me much better solutions. This is not my secret. A student can pay $20 a month and do the same exact thing right now. Why not give that solution already to them and then have them interact with it? They're probably going to be doing it anyhow. I think that's almost everything I have to say. Oh, if you haven't heard of agents, are you guys going to talk about this? This is absolutely incredible. I don't have time to show this video. Anthropic, who published Claude, came out with this thing for computer use. Just Google it, watch it. Basically, you can give this LLM a prompt, something like, I'm going to Paris in 6 months. Book me, reservations, flights, tell me everything that I need to know for my flight, my trip. And it goes off and does it. It's a little clunky, it's a little experimental, but 2025 is supposed to be the year of the agents where you can just talk to your computer and it'll do mind-blowing things. And we're not even in 2025 yet in this platform.
The data I need.
This guys. Here's some resources. Sharon mentioned the Rocky Mountain AI interest group. We have an education subgroup for this. I definitely encourage you to entertain being a part of that group. We talk about stuff all the time. There's a lot of other resources here. Watch this learning design group video that came out. It was really pretty good. They talk about data compliance, governance, and a little bit of this LLM playground that's coming out. Matt Wolf is a fantastic YouTuber. I watch him to get a lot of my YouTube content. That's everything that I had. Sorry, I went over a little bit,
Oh,
but
it's okay.
yeah.
We have time. So maybe we have time, like a couple of minutes for questions before we get the next talk started. We still have 4 minutes. So questions, comments. So maybe I have one meta question. There's so many things coming up. And one of the things I'm a computer scientist, that I shouldn't be saying this, but I feel overwhelmed, like just figuring out like what's new, because by the time I figure it out, something else has come up in the landscape. What do you use to keep yourself up to date, and how do you get your?
So Matt Wolf is where I get a lot of information. I think just being a part of these different communities, a little bit of a vulnerable aspect to that. When O1 preview came out, I had these same thoughts. I was like, oh my God, what is this going to mean about my career? And I chatted with O1 preview and I basically laid it all out. I was like, I'm concerned. What does higher ed mean? What does education mean? I'm really struggling trying to keep up with everything. And I could pull up the chat or send it to you. It's really quite interesting and humbling and exciting. The answer it gave is focus on a couple things, right? Focus on what you feel like you want to work on. So these summarizers, and I have some little chat bots in development, and these other things that I find are interesting and useful for my students. And then it said, just pay attention to everything else. But this world is going to evolve so quick. If you try to stay ahead of the game, you're already behind. You're not going to be able to do it. So just be humble and realize it's okay. Focus on what you can control, and then let everything else kind of just happen and flow and be excited about it. So I don't know. When it told me that, I was like, well, okay, that's a pretty good approach. Let's go with that for the next couple months and see what happens. But it's totally true.
So as a follow-up, then as faculty members, we have a ton of PDFs for our classes. Would you recommend that the first step would be to try something like Notebook LM or a custom GPT to make our simple PDFs more interactive? Is that the first step you would recommend, or is there a different first step?
So what I would recommend now is, yes, Notebook LM. I think it's so easy to make those things more interactive. I don't know if you're going to change the content of the PDFs, but what I've done with some of the research and engineering education things that I'm trying to digest is I'll upload a couple papers in a Notebook LM, and I'll ask it to give me an audio overview. So in 15 minutes, I can have a very high level summary of 20 pages, 20 documents. And that will then establish some deeper content when I go in and I read those papers. It'll help me understand, where does this fit in with the broader community? And it's not perfect all the time. It makes some slip ups, but for 15 minutes of your time to have a really good summary of hours and hours worth of reading, I think is tremendously powerful. What I tell my students is upload my assignments, chat with it there. That way you can start to get an understanding of what's happening, and then still use me for the deeper understanding and for the correct response.
To be very clear though, it's 15 minutes for you to understand it, just because you have all the background knowledge you need to really understand that research paper or whatever it is.
Well, I guess I would push back on that a little bit. What is understanding? This gives me a quick glance into 50 different documents, right? Do I really understand all those documents without going into it? And this gets to what you were talking about before, right? This is only a very 30,000 foot look at all of this content. To really understand it, you have to focus your attention on whatever you still focus on. And I think that's kind of what Diane was talking about too.
But also, but this is why students have to understand what they don't understand, because this provides you with the illusion that you do understand those things.
Right.
Right. So unless you're aware of the fact that you can't really understand those things yet, I fear that this will become the substitute for understanding.
Right.
So Bobby, kind of, if I think now from a scalability of what we propose here, kind of, if I look at my colleagues and I look at myself, we are typically already overwhelmed by people. If I just look at how many people still struggle with Canvas, moving 3 icons around, kind of the question really is, have you thought of vision how all the things you acquired, I assume on your spare time, because you're a great guy, how can we scale that up to a college level? Do we need essentially a office or, you know, a few people that are there for supporting the faculty? And okay, are we there yet where we can do that, where we should do it? What is your recommendation? Because I think this Wild West time is great, it's exciting, but we have to get out of that.
Well, I think this is gonna lead in very nicely to, I don't know if you guys are gonna talk about some of the stuff that you have going on at business, so I think that's a very nice segue there. My personal opinion is we can't, 2 years worth of watching YouTube videos and play around and stuff and 25 minutes, so didn't do it justice, and there's a lot of things I had to leave out. Should we? I think that's a big ethical question. I think we must, because these students are using it already. That's what Diane started with. I think employers are going to be expecting it. If they're not, why would they not? Right? You can have basically an entry-level engineer, top tier writer for $20 a month on staff all the time. And if you're in a top secret security place, well, just have a $3,000 computer and you can send everything over there. It's fully in-house.
Yeah, my question was much more operational. I think the ship has sailed. If we don't teach our students how to use AI, I think we do a disservice to them. This is like you would say, okay, let's ignore that there exists a computer and we still have them writing whatever. No, the question is really kind of, how do we, all the knowledge that Diane, you, and other dedicated faculty have acquired, how can we make this more accessible to the faculty? And that is really a question. And I'm totally stunned, but I'm also totally, overwhelmed. And I don't think I'm totally computer illiterate. I do that essentially 24/7, but not on AI. And so I wonder, kind of what is the vision from your perspective? Kind of how do you think we can share all your insights? And when I say you, I mean all the people that work and have figured out things. How can we share this such that faculty feel that this is a task they can accomplish, because in the short term there will be a return on investment?
I think, workshops like this is a good place to start. I think these individuals have put together a Canvas course, something to that nature, at least for the business school faculty. I think things like that are pretty low hanging fruit to at least reach up and grab and see where it goes. In terms of a full office, I don't know, that's probably a question for Keith more than anything else.
He pays the bill, but yeah, do we need it?
Certainly, I think part of it is we are looking into having at least a couple of professional research assistants or research assistants who are very knowledgeable about this, who will be able to support the faculty. But longer term, we probably need to get some kind of consulting group going from the college to consult with faculty.
And I think OIT and arts and sciences, like the way I view it is there's a lot of little fires that are popping up everywhere. And I think the vice chancellor's office is trying to get, their hands wrapped around things. So I don't think we want to wait and see what happens. So I think we can be proactive in our own little world. At least that's how I see it. Keith, you're in a different world than I'm in. So I think your reach can go further. But I think these are good questions to have, and forums like this is how we talk about those questions.
A drop-in lab might help.
Yeah, I like that. This is super cool.
If we could scale up a little bit, we could reach more faculty. Because unless you're playing with it, it's not real. And there are very few opportunities to do that. And there's very little opportunity to be playful instead of just be fearful about it. So I just feel like we could set that tone and create a space.
So that's a great discussion point. We do have one more workshop coming up on December 6th. And I really am hoping that these are discussion points that we will have some time for on the 6th. But in the meantime, let me introduce our next couple of speakers. I attended a seminar organized by the Discipline-Based Education Group, and I heard Jeremiah Contreras and Matthew Arnold, who are both professors in the Leeds School of Business, talk about how they designed assessments, novel types of assessments that are enabled by ChatGPT. And And I felt that there is a lot of possibilities beyond creating notebooks and beyond thinking about how we take our existing material, like how can new types of assessments come to be. And I am really excited that Jeremiah and Matthew are here to tell us about it and educate us about what they're doing. So take it away.
Thank you for having us. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, what's amazing to see is all the people that are exploring and dabbling and trying this from day one or a month ago. You know, there's so much alignment, yet there's something I learn every time from someone that talks, right? There's like so much here. And so, you know, we kind of thought we'd take this approach of reimagining education. Like, how do you even think about putting this into your class? How do you think about, you know, from a system perspective as well? And we'll talk a little bit about what we do at Leeds. So yeah, Jeremiah Contreras, I started off engineering for 2 years and then made the travel to the dark side with accounting. And so that was my path into the business world.
Yeah, my path into the business world, I actually have my PhD over across campus in the integrative physiology department. During a postdoc, I realized that I learned some things about machine learning, and then made my way over to the Leeds School of Business and really have enjoyed my time over there.
So yeah, we wanted to talk a little bit. So at Leeds, we've kind of structured this AI integration into 3 components. We have a teaching and learning component where we have a committee who's really focused on how to integrate in teaching and learning. We have an administration and operations where we're trying to figure out how can we fit it into the operations side of things with our staff. And that's David Conkey who's running that. David DeBolier is pushing forward the research team. And so we're trying to figure out how to integrate these tools, utilize them for research and research. We're going to really focus on the teaching and learning today. And so, you know, it's all of these elements, right? I mean, Diane and Bobby, you guys are doing similar things with the tools, but in different ways. And there's just this breadth of ways of using these tools. And so, I mean, just high level.
Yeah, high level. What are we talking about today? So just general, I heard that to do a good presentation, my PhD advisor always said you have to tell people what you're going to tell them. So first we'll talk about collaboration and maybe this idea of paradigm shift. Why do we need to address AI? Perhaps a possible reimagining of Bloom's taxonomy, and then some use cases we'll get into at the end. And first of all, I think that what I want to just high level think about is this collaboration. Like, when was the last time that business school, all of these siloed colleges are getting together for a meeting? Is there something that's universal? Is there, instead of the content that we each are teaching within these siloed systems, is there some universal knowledge, some universal human intelligence that's coming through now, that the same solutions that we use to solve the problems are now universal? And so if that's true, then perhaps we have a really amazing opportunity to be united in this way, maybe like never before. And so this is really perhaps a paradigm shift in the way that we see education. Instead of content and differences in content, this process of critical thinking and problem solving, which is more of a universal and universally applicable.
Yeah, and I mean, really, we're in this place where there's a whiteboard. It's a clean slate. None of us knows the answer. Yeah, we're learning from each other. We're, you know, it's through this process of sharing and the workshops and hearing, you know, questions and challenging what's happening and addressing the ethics, right? It's through that process that that's why collaboration is so important and just working together on this. So, you know, a little bit about what we've done at Leeds. We have the Leeds AI integration strategy. You know, why AI? That was kind of the first question, right? It's the world is changing. It's here, right? Generative AI is really, well, it's powerful. It's risky. There's dangers. And you know, but kind of aside from things that are happening in the world, we know when it comes to students, we believe that AI can enhance critical thinking, right? When we do it right in the classroom, when it's addressed, you know, with these assistants with writing or evaluating a summary, these custom GPTs, all of that. But on the other side, if we don't address it, then you have the risk of a lack of critical thinking, that loss of thought. And so, you know, we're starting to see this wave of students who were introduced to this in high school. And students were introduced in middle school. And so, the path of least resistance, it's easy to just say, do my assignment for me. And so there's, when we get students right now, we're starting to see this influx of people who are having to do this retraining of how to think about this and how to engage with it, right? That's the reason we have to have that. And hopefully we can get the K through 12 side on board as well. But we have to at least figure out this side first, right? Dean Cautry, the lead business College of Business, he kicked off the AI initiative middle of last semester. And so the end of last semester, we started a few committees, and over the summer, a lot of people worked really hard. We had a couple of faculty training programs, and so these workshops are a perfect example of things that are really powerful and impactful. And then we started integrating. We had a plan to integrate into all of our business core classes, the classes that every single freshman and sophomore take. So we figured, as opposed to create one class where you teach AI, we talk about it in our ethics class, in our communications class, in our marketing, accounting, all of those. And so trying to have that coordinated approach and roll out. So we make sure that all of our students are hearing the same message, so that as they move up, they know how to use it appropriately, what to do, what not to do, as a learning point.
Well, so when do we use AI? So the process of just identifying appropriate scenarios has been a real challenge. It's been a real challenge. I think this path towards least resistance, right now, and I'll show you examples, students see AI as the ability to solve or answer questions that they have. That is where they are using these prompts. Oh, I was given this question by my professor. How do you help me solve it? And when is the appropriate use? And that is, again, a rhetorical question. I feel like everything we're asking here is kind of rhetorical. How do we encourage critical thinking? What is that process? Where's the change? Where is the change from the way that we used to do things in this brave new world? How are we going to approach this? And then all of the tools, again, it can be really challenging to just have exposure, in that if you feel like you are keeping up to date or just behind, well, guess what? There's a new something coming out every week. And every time we come to these trainings, and we've been to several across campus, we always hear a new application. Things are changing so quick. Anything else you want to say on this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the when to use, identifying appropriate scenarios, it's not a one size fits all tool. You don't want to just shove it in, there needs to be a little strategy and thought, and kind of thinking through the level of the course, the type of course. Writing is going to be different than math and some business. And that level and type of course is going to change and flow with what is the level of AI integration. I mean, hands down, probably something that all students will and probably should be doing is at least using it to summarize data, to understand data and interact with it. But how does that differ from, should they use it on an assignment in my classroom, on an exam, and just kind of identifying those boundaries.
So I kind of want to move to just talk about this idea of Bloom's taxonomy, how we learn. What's the process of learning? Do we recall facts? This would be the lowest level in the Bloom's taxonomy. Do we understand? Can we explain ideas? Can we apply these new ideas? Can we draw connections? Can we justify or make a decision? And then finally produce new original work. What I'm arguing is, with these tools, the availability of these tools, we're really seeing a change, perhaps, in this taxonomy. And of course, this might activate a few people. Perhaps creation in the application need to switch positions now. Perhaps the process of creating novel or synthetic content. I mean, even this, we talked about this idea of a paradigm. In a Kuhnian paradigm, most people are just technicians of the paradigm. Are all of us, and I know we have some really highly skilled scientists here who are on the call and have produced some really amazing work, but what level are we, what's the cutoff between new versus synthetic work? At some level, are we all just producing synthetic work? And if we have a generative tool that can do this so quick, then perhaps this is a much lower bar than it used to be. And instead of remember or recalling basic facts, perhaps inquiry needs to be the new kind of bottom level of this hierarchy. And perhaps it's not even a hierarchy. I think we've said multiple times that maybe this is more of an iterative approach, so that maybe if we start with inquire, and if you have seen students interact with ChatGPT, you realize that they don't understand oftentimes the assignment or what to ask ChatGPT. That what they do is copy and paste a question that they have right into the inquiry. From the inquiry, maybe they go to understand at some level. Maybe they understand enough to inquire again. Maybe they take another loop around the right side of this, and they have ChatGPT create something. Well, maybe what we need to do as educators is the creation of content is easy. The creation of content is easy, and I will show you some examples of what I've had students do in class. A 10-page paper anymore can be generated in a few minutes. And in fact, 100 pages can be generated in a few minutes. And from those 100 pages, can students look at that 100 pages of content, analyze it, evaluate it? And if they can evaluate it and put these things together in a way that makes logical sense, well, perhaps that's a useful skill. And perhaps the application of this novel content is really what we need students to think about. Maybe that's the universal goal of where we need to head. And then application, that is going to be discipline specific, but perhaps this process looks really similar to get us there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the perfect link. And you know, Diane, you had mentioned this process concept, right? And so the process isn't, I mean, especially if we think about our assessments, oftentimes it's a product, right? It's something that comes out that we grade, we have a rubric or whatever it is, the solution to a problem. But oftentimes that solution isn't really what we're looking for in developing, right? We're developing students' process. How do we help that? And so, you know, it's iterative. It's that iterative process. This is our product. I know I'm like, it's so much alignment, right? It's like, you know, you have these thoughts, and that's just learning in general. That's not tied to any one topic. And you know, Matthew's had some. You're going to go into an amazing. You'll show your sharing. I'll just quickly talk about one of the assignments that I talked about at the other lecture was, you know, normally I have students who understand the business process, maybe what 2 or 3 people in the company do. They learn about it. They look for how they work together, look for control weaknesses, and how do you prevent, you know, risks and bad things from happening in a business standpoint. And what I can do is I can create 3 different characters with ChatGPT and have a student sit down and have a conversation and do a walkthrough and almost interact and learn about the process. Simulation, absolutely. And so just with a custom GPT, and it's I mean, it can get kind of complex, but it's human language. I'm not programming. And so by that process, I'm not grading their product of their analysis and their report on the weaknesses. What I do is I have them copy and paste the chat, which we'll talk about in further detail. And I look at their engagement. Are they asking questions? Can I see critical thought? Are they engaging back and forth? And that's, I think, much more powerful if we coach that aspect of it. You know, we can really get at the secret of how to change that thought.
Yeah. So here are a couple of iterations of a homework that I had where I really wanted them and to coach them working through my students. That is, this is in a intro to info management analytics class. Where we begin to show them the fundamentals, the basics of machine learning. We used to use an automated machine learning tool in order to take the outcomes of these machine learnings and how do you, once you understand the outcomes, how do you apply that to a novel situation? Well, so what I wanted to do in one assignment was to just have them create database or have them create tables of data and then combine tables of data and ask the large language model to coach them through this process of how to use SQL in order to combine tables. Well, with this first assignment, what I noticed is that students, and then again, with all of these assignments, I have them copy and paste their entire prompt and response so that I can see that at the end. What I notice is that students, when I give one question at a time, basically take one question at a time, put that into the prompt, look at the response, and then they copy and paste that response into the homework. Is there a level of learning here? Or is it simply just a basic level? We're going back to Bloom's taxonomy at the inquiry. So if we've changed it from understand to inquiry, what's actually happening there? That's basic. That can be done by a bot. If that is all that students know how to do when they leave our university, they're going to be paralyzed when they get into the workforce. So what I thought I would do, I'd be really clever and give them an assignment that was much too large, I thought, for them to just put into the chatbot and get 10 pages at a time. And so what actually happened? Well, students took the entire assignment and they tried to put it into the chatbot. Now, mind you, this comes after an entire lecture, or at least half of a lecture, of talking about the efficacy of prompting and simply just asking the chatbots how to prompt effectively, giving them some basics about how to coach the GPT, in this case, ChatGPT, and to give them what they want. And still even after this lecture, after highlighting that 40% of the assignment was going to be on the critical nature of their prompts, guess what happened? They took the entire assignment and they put it into the prompt. And then they didn't necessarily like it. So what did they do again? They didn't just go step by step into this creation of this 10-page document. They rejiggered their prompt in order to hopefully get a different 10-page document. And so what this highlights is that there's a fundamental kind of gap in between how students are already being trained to use this thing to get to the product. And it really highlights the necessity for us to make sure that they understand the iterative process, that they see how we do it. And I really feel like maybe that's the universal, that we need to begin engaging them and actually demonstrating our process. And I believe that is going to be essential.
And what I found interesting, if you were to have graded the papers that they submitted, what did they look like? What was the quality?
Yeah, so again, with very few exceptions, it would have been 40%. Maybe they would have received five out of those 40 points. And so already that's putting them at a D level work. Well, then what I also asked them for are things like actual use cases. And in actual use cases, what they did is they asked ChatGPT what their actual use cases are. And I've seen how students are using these tools. And I will tell you that it's much different than ChatGPT thinks that the students are using the tools. And so we have to keep this in mind.
Yeah, no, and I think at the heart of this is if the students were to give inputs that were quality, researched, had analysis, had thought, had understanding, then the 10-page report would be something that they have helped create.
Findings.
Okay. But if you just have them put in the assignment, it just spits out something that actually, when we looked at them together, the quality was, they looked great, it sounded great. There was some substance to it. ChatGPT is getting really good at communicating and at delivering creating content. And so, you know, the grade, without looking at a chat, I mean, it was pretty high. They were pretty, it seemed like fairly quality work.
Yeah.
And so the importance of that input versus output and that loop. I mean, that's exactly what you were identifying there.
Yeah, content is easy. And if I recommend, if you're going to have students give you all of this, give you all of their prompts, all you have to do is just Control F, you said, and then you can go through and then look at their prompts. Yeah. That's what we have. We really do appreciate the opportunity, right? This is great. So questions.
Yeah, so these are all fun, right? And it's great tools to use, but I'm at the groundworks, like I'm a lead TA as well at this point in time, so I deal with a lot of students. And it really makes me sad that they are using this to a very large extent, and there are no ways put in place for us to kind of say that, hey, you're not supposed to use this, right? And I understand the fact that, yeah, there needs to be a paradigm shift in the way in which you want to teach courses. How can you do that for something that's more theoretical, right? Or something that's more, say, for example, operating systems in CSEI. How would you have this kind of an angle to teach that course going forward? Are faculties willing to take that jump?
That's where the exciting meets the scary. It's, I mean, you know, we just came through the pandemic of figuring out how do we do this online, a lot of work. And so, you know, to see it's in the long run, there's probably a lot of changes. So the question then just becomes, what do we do in the short run? And what can are there minor tweaks we can make? And that is, it's unique per class. We do sit down with faculty and kind of talk about, okay, in this class, what makes sense? Is there a different way of looking at this? What are your thoughts? And try to figure out, is it a custom GBT? Is it a change in the process or the assignment? So, I mean, it's individual. Yeah.
So to CK's point, I think that's super important. The technical stuff will eventually become easy. That's where this is moving to, where, you know, we will figure out that, you know, if there is 5 steps you need to create something, they will figure out a way to do it in 2 steps or a step, right? Make it more friendly. But the thing that's hard is the pedagogy of it. This process that you mentioned, it's so great, by the way, but it's so different for every single class that we have to think, even within a class, I'm thinking this particular topic, I'll have to do this process this way, whereas this other topic, I might have to do this the other way, right? And so it's getting to be a scary thing. And I'm wondering, like, should we rethink textbooks? Do textbooks have a place in the future? Right. So there's a lot of interesting questions that this raises. And very, very scary, as you mentioned. We don't have the answers in many cases.
Yeah, we were talking. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we were talking about how. Do you even know? Do we need to know what 2 + 2 is, or do we need to know when to do 2 + 2?
Yeah.
And right, where are those lines? I'm not arguing that is the point, but there are lines that are going to need to change as far as what is foundational versus what is. And one of the thoughts is maybe instead of the expectations of starting here, we can expect students to start here, and then just expect more of them, which hopefully is how we can help us scale and not lose our jobs, as we just elevate everyone to a supervisor or manager. And so how do we do that?
Yeah, I like your idea of changing Bloom's taxonomy. I think that really gets at the heart of it, that the part that is still there that you did not change was the analyze part. And I saw that also in Diane's, you know, you made some statements. I think that the role of the human will be more about, you know, kind of essentially checking, you know, kind of, and in order to say some text that reads well, or some product that looks well designed is actually what we wanted, you need actually have a very deep understanding. And so, you know, you ask, do we still need to know 2 + 2? Actually, my concern is that the answer is we still, maybe not, but we need to understand number theory. So I actually expect that the outcome of all that is that we will have to spend much more time on really the fundamentals. So I think a lot of the to some extent, the easy stuff, that will be taken care of, but we have to equip our students in a much better way to really understand the fundamentals. So I was part of a calculus task force that we had in the spring on campus, and there were kind of voices that said, do we need all that math? I can tell you, I think because of all that, we need even more math, and we need it actually at the even more abstract level than we currently teach. Now, how we get there with the students, that will be actually, I also don't know the answer, but I'm totally convinced that the value that humans add will be on a much more fundamental level than it's currently, because writing 10 pages, putting words together will be so much easier, which I think will require changes to the curriculum, to all our curricula at a very fundamental level.
Yeah, I mean, something that we could have talked about, but didn't, and if it seems like there's some really high level folks here thinking about this. So we're going to do this, but if you haven't read this paper, I really recommend doing it. It's basically, it was published by Apple Research, and it went into understanding the limitations of these large language models, and that there are some very easy ways in order to decrease how well these things perform in a variety of different tasks. So maybe in the short term, you might be able to use some of these techniques in order to catch folks that are trying to take the easy way out, perhaps by slightly adjusting the way that you ask questions for your homework. Yeah.
So you mentioned one more thing that really caught my attention. I think everyone did. The fact that as faculty, we need to be a few steps ahead of our students. Probably that few needs to be many steps ahead of our students, because we need to model some of these practices, and I think that's something that, you know, I think we need to get started on that, right?
And to your point of the operations pieces, faculty needs support in that, right? Like,
Oh,
I imagine,
absolutely.
like, just a very discipline specific levels of conversation to be able to redesign all your assignments, because that's what's going to need to happen, is that all the assignments need to be redesigned in such a way that it's not about declarative knowledge. It is about that synthesis and the figure eight, which is brilliant, by the way. Thank you for bringing that up.
There's one thing I can think of, and I think the computer scientists have already encountered the challenge of assessment, because the code writing can be done now in an automated way. And so I understand that you go back to this interview type of assessment. What I would hope is that we can have the interview done actually with a bot.
So you can.
And that is,
Already.
that would be actually not only convenient, but I believe that only, we always say we have these oral exams, typically more on the graduate side, but on the undergrad side. But I'm always stunned how excellent grad students crumble when they have to give an oral exam, because it exposes really their, beyond being nervous, but I think fundamentally exposes weaknesses in understanding. If I could do that from day one with my undergrad students, that would totally get them to a new level.
And the beauty of that is you used to have to spend a lot of money and a lot of bureaucratic paperwork to get an educational technology tool to become a simulation. You now have it in your hands to do it in likely an hour or two, as Bobby suggested, and you suggested it.
Oh, yeah.
Right, Ethan Mollick is totally doing that. And
Yeah.
so it's so exciting in that sense, where you can create this right now.
Yeah, and that's
And
what
you
I
can
want to
pay
learn
anybody
how to
for
do it.
Mhm.
I want to have my 80 students or my 300 students do an interview with a bot, and the bot tells me they didn't understand the aerodynamics, or they, kind of what were the weaknesses, and I get that essentially, and I can do that instead of number crunching, they can do that as a part of their homework exam. I get really meaningful feedback. I can adjust my lectures. Sooner or later, the bot will adjust its lectures, but we don't go there.
So there's actually an individual, Chris something, he was one of the first speakers at the RMAG education, and he's doing this right now. So he has his students give an oral reply to whatever it was. I think you were at this talk, right?
Yeah.
And then he has the AI summarize the oral review, and then he looks at the AI summary of the oral review, and then has another AI to it's integrated, and it's for a coding class, and it works great,
Yeah.
right? Because one of the most important parts from an educator's point of view is giving timely feedback so that the students can do some work, get critiqued on their work, and then have enough time to implement those
Yeah.
corrections.
Mhm.
And in large classes, we know this all the time. It may take weeks to give feedback just because of the sheer volume. And by that time, so much of that information is in and out of their heads that they're moving on to the next thing.
And I can tell you, the most important bot will be the one that handles student complaints. Because they will all complain about the bot didn't understand my answer.
So on that very positive note, I would like to really I would like to really thank our panelists, our presenters today, and I would like to thank everyone for participating on such a snowy day. The second workshop will be on December 6th. We are still putting together a program, so I sent out a form if you wanted to contribute to that. And so I hope to see everyone. We'll also have some exciting announcements about the College of Engineering initiatives on generative AI coming in the coming weeks. So there's a few that are going to come up, and watch out for them. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.